Hello, you guys. I just wanted to take a moment before we get into today's video to have a vulnerable chat with you guys. I want my channel to be a place for not only you guys, but for me to focus on creativity, community, and the content that I'm passionate about. But the harsh reality is that videos like this, specifically where I am commentating on movies, TV shows, it either is blocked completely or it is demonetized. It's just so frustrating because I filmed over 4 hours of commentary for this movie about autism, PTSD, how the double empathy problem impacts your relationships with others, sensory issues, and how that affects your everyday, and breaking down the mechanisms of what plays into autistic rigidity. I want to be able to include as much of the film in my video as I can so that you guys can see and hear for yourself what it is I am commentating on. Because as autistic folks, observing every little nuance of sound design, facial expressions, body gestures, it all makes a huge difference. I've tried editing this video 20 plus times, and each time I'm cutting down the footage less and less and less. And I eventually got to a point where I'm like, what's even the point anymore if you guys can't see the thing I'm commentating on and can't watch it for yourself? And for what? I want to be able to edit these together, upload it on my channel without having to worry about, am I spending too much time on this, too many days, too many hours editing these videos for it to ultimately not be able to be monetized and I can't pay my bills for that month or the month after. I am the only person that's working on these videos behind the scenes. That means I am only capable of uploading videos on this channel once a week. And as you guys can imagine, if that one video I can manage to get out once a week becomes demonetized, it becomes really hard. It becomes very difficult. I don't want to have to think about these sorts of things, but because YouTube is my job, I'm forced to. And I wish it wasn't like that, you know? I oftentimes get comments from people saying, your videos should have more views, or I thought that you would be bigger. That's the ugly truth sometimes. Certain people who make content online could put so much time, effort, and heart into it, and that doesn't necessarily translate into success or numbers. And that's just how it is. And I choose to not think too much about it, because if I do, I will become a bitter ass bitch, and I don't want to be. I just want to do what I'm passionate about and make sure that I at least make enough to pay my bills. Even me just communicating about this isn't coming from a place where I'm trying to guilt trip anyone. I'm genuinely just trying to be as honest, as transparent, and straightforward as possible so that whatever decisions I have to ultimately make, it's not just coming out of nowhere and you guys kind of are in tune with where I'm at and what I'm going through behind the scenes in making certain decisions moving forward. I'm hoping that I could take the 4 hours of commentary that I film, pump those videos out on this channel as much as I can, but of course I'm gonna have to somewhat prioritize videos that can be monetized, because whatever little money my videos do make still makes a huge difference for me. Here are the extra ways that you can continue to support this channel: making more efforts to like every video that you watch, leaving a comment for the algorithm, or just making more of an effort to partake in the discussions in my comment section, or sharing my videos with loved ones that may benefit from watching my videos, subscribing to my channel, creating more engagement, all the way to donating every now and then through the Buy Me Coffee link, becoming a YouTube member, or becoming a patron. These are all great ways that you can support me if you want to. No pressure, right? No pressure. I'm on the same boat as you guys. I know that our economy sucks, at least here in America. A lot of us are struggling financially. So whatever you choose to do and whatever you're capable of, I will be so appreciative of that. Maybe it wouldn't make too much of a difference for other content creators that are a lot bigger and get a lot more views, more engagement, more success. But for small channels like me, every single way that you choose to engage and to support makes a huge huge direct impact. But enough of this. I want to finally get into today's video and the most real depiction of what an internalized meltdown looks like, what it feels like, and all of the things that lead up to that internalized meltdown. Thank you guys for letting me be vulnerable for a second. I really do appreciate you. Hello, you guys. So today I want to watch and commentate on the movie Kimi. I actually first found and watched this film ironically back when I was getting my autism assessment, so that was a few years ago. And back when I first watched this film, I felt immediately drawn to the main character, Angela. I wasn't sure why, but fast forward a few years later, I realized that I resonate so much with the main character because she's autistic. And I'm not sure if the director of the film or whoever wrote the script and all that kind of stuff outright said she was autistic, but it is heavily implied. And this isn't just me using a character as a way to explore concepts surrounding the autistic experiences. I would not be surprised if whoever made this film is autistic themselves, because there's so many little minute details of how this film was made that hones in on what it could feel like to be autistic and having sensory issues and how that impacts your life and your relationships. It was so refreshing to see my own experiences be translated so effectively. And it made me have this huge realization that a lot of the films or TV show characters that I feel most drawn to, or the movies that I feel most connected to, are movies that essentially know how to bring to life what it could feel like to be an autistic person. All of this to say, I want to, for the first time, comb through this short film with a fine-tooth comb and commentate on every little aspect of the main character and how that ties to the autistic experience. It's going to take a long time. This is basically going to be us watching a full-on movie together and being able to talk about it and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if this video ended up being like 2 hours, because I'm going to be watching and responding, and I'm going to try to talk as quietly as possible so that I don't lose my voice, because I really easily do that. I actually rewatched the film last night and wrote down multiple pages of notes that I want to get to. Girls, I came prepared. I am ready for this because I want to do this movie justice. Get comfortable. I have my water here. I have my coffee. And I ate my breakfast this morning, so let's buckle in. I am ready to dive deep into the waters of Kimi. So we're going to see in her morning routine how particular she is about her environment, which could be, in a sense, a survival mechanism as an autistic person that we develop unconsciously, because the world can oftentimes be so overwhelming and so outside of our control that we end up exerting as much control as we can afford to in the places that we can in our lives, which is usually with our bodies, with our home, with our routines, things like that. She has to make sure everything's clean, everything is in its place. You could see the way that she lays her pillows completely flat and symmetrically next to each other. How the blanket doesn't even have wrinkles and is pulled very proportionally straight. The way that she is brushing her retainers with toothpaste. most people don't keep up with the cleanliness of their retainers. When you think about the DSM-5 and how medical professionals understand autistic traits, they list down behaviors like rigidity, right? This is an autistic trait. This is what autistic people do, but they don't study why autistic folks are rigid. It's just an interesting thing to think about because most average people that don't care to think any deeper into the why would just see her as being agoraphobic and possibly even compulsive. In reality, I just see it as not necessarily a fear of the outside world, but just why would I want to go outside if it is so unpleasant of an experience and is so dysregulating. Everything and everyone is so unpredictable and oftentimes can respond negatively to us. And so it makes sense that you become a recluse at some point. I'd rather stay at home where I am somewhat in control of the things around me and what's happening to me. That's why I feel so connected to this movie, because especially now that I'm, 28 years old and living on my own, I can resonate with, oh yeah, once you start building your own heaven at home and accommodating all your needs and all that kind of stuff, you just don't want to leave ever. You know what it feels like to be regulated now. Of course you don't want to be dysregulated. There's a difference between being someone who's just suffering because of mental health issues, emotional issues, and things like that, and someone who is disabled and struggling with mental health issues because the world around them and the systems around them don't support their neurodivergent autistic needs. And so the only ways to get that need met is to just be by yourself and be completely self-sufficient and not relying or partaking in the outside world. All right, so we see here that she has some sort of relationship with the guy who lives across from her. This is probably one of the reasons why she likes to go to her window and check in on her neighbors. I think this sort of voyeurism is definitely an attribute to being an internalized processor and not someone who likes to partake and directly interact with the world around her. She likes to observe people from afar, which goes hand in hand with wanting to be on your own and be in control of what happens to you and the things that you're processing. What we're about to see is the main character, Angela, about to go out and grab some food from the taco truck right outside her apartment with the guy she's sleeping with. Super casual, right? No big deal. But we will see that it is actually a lot more complicated for Angela because of her sensory sensitivities. At the end of the scene, we'll also see her have an internalized autistic meltdown. This movie does a really good job in depicting what it actually feels like as the autistic person to go through this sort of anxiety / overstimulation / internalized meltdown. So if that is something that might trigger you or dysregulate you really bad, perhaps skip forward into my analyzations and don't watch the scene. But if you do want to watch it, just kind of mentally prepare yourself. It's not too bad. It's just, I want to be mindful of people out there. Whenever I go out with friends, no matter how casual, no matter how comfortable I am with the person, I go through this getting ready process too, where it's almost like I'm preparing for battle. I know logically that doesn't make sense, and trust me, we understand that too, but physically, it feels like you're going to war. Your body is anticipating to be extremely overstimulated and overloaded and not have control over all of these unpredictable situations. And that's really hard when you have a genuine desire to socialize with others. You want to go grab lunch with someone, you want to go out with a friend, but it's actually so difficult for you when you have all of these specific needs that go unsupported. I searched up what those 3 meds are on her countertop. They are medications for insomnia, anxiety, and depression. very classic comorbidities with autism. I mean, if you think about it, being chronically dysregulated causes you to be very anxious. And then when you're really anxious, it's hard for you to fall asleep because your body is in fight or flight. When you have a hard time maintaining your relationship with community, with other people in the outside world, that leads into depression because you are living a dysfunctional life, and anyone would be depressed if they're living a dysfunctional life, you know? Oh my God, that's such a cool detail that I didn't catch on to the first few times. She switched her purse over, not to the other shoulder, but she flipped it around because she wants the zipper on her side so that when she zips her purse open, she could just zip it away from her rather than having to zip it towards her. They're not just these weird autistic quirks. They all have a very specific sensory explanation for it. I want us to stop thinking of autistic folks as being just rigid. I want us to start deepening our understanding of those sort of behaviors as this is what happens when autistic folks are not properly accommodated by the world and environment around them. And so we have to develop these behaviors because we are the only means to accommodating our sensory sensitivities. So the question is, what would autistic people be like? What would our personalities be like? What would our behaviors be like if we lived in a society where our sensory sensitivities and autistic needs are accommodated? Would we be as anxious? Would we be as dysregulated? Would we be as particular? Would we be as rigid? Would we struggle as much with anxiety and fears of leaving the house? How would our ideas of objective DSM-5 autistic traits change if systems actually were there to be inclusive of us? Some food for thought. For others, she looks scattered. It might look like disorganization, but I actually see it as her accounting for all the things that might go wrong. She's actually very intentional about finding the things she needs to accommodate a specific sensitivity. She brought her meds just in case she has a panic attack or anxiety attack outside, which is so real. It's hard to have to constantly accommodate your needs because you're almost accounting for the worst case scenario to happen when it may not happen. The inverse to that is you try to believe that everything will work out, but you don't want to get stuck with, something going wrong and not having accommodations at the time. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's a lose-lose situation. In order for you to make sure you're supported, just in case something happens, you have to anticipate something to happen. But at the same time, it's like this weird self-sabotaging thing where because you're anticipating something to go wrong, it's already putting you on edge and makes it more likely for you to be overstimulated because you're already overstimulated by anticipating how something is going to go wrong. This is why I think it's heavily implied her character is autistic, because the puzzle key, I think it's pretty obvious. For those of you who don't know, the puzzle shape has been widely used as a symbol of autism. A lot of people don't like that sort of iconography, so most people prefer that rainbow infinity sign. So what we're about to see here is Angela having an internalized meltdown. For me, observing this, it's not this sudden thing that just hit her. She was already struggling with dysregulation and anxiety for a long time leading up to the meltdown. It started when she had made plans with the guy to go get tacos. When she texted him, she was okay because she was regulated, she was in control of her routine, her environment, her day, and how things were going, so she feels good, right? And so when she started preparing to see him, the actual preparing part, the logical, objective part, she's going through in her head all of the things she's gonna need to go meet up with him. And that whole process is a lot, right? So it makes sense that by the time she's about to leave her front door, it's like a culmination of all of these scenarios or sensory nightmares boiling up to a point where she physically is like, I can't go through with it. It's too much. I don't want to. I just can't put myself through the situation. Imagine there's a box in front of you and someone asks you to put your hand in there without knowing what's in there. Depending on who you are, you may not fear putting your hand in there because you think to yourself, oh, nothing could be that bad. Maybe it's even a pleasant thing, but you have to understand putting our hand in the box for us as autistic folks with sensory sensitivities feels like whatever our hand touches in that box is going to hurt. Does that make sense? So for a normal person, they have a wider range of what could be in the box. Maybe it could be a soft bunny. Maybe it could be a very slimy, squishy fruit. Maybe it could be a very sharp cactus, whatever it is, right? But for autistic folks with sensory sensitivities, all of the options in the box hurt us really bad. It could be a spiky cactus. It could be a very sharp knife. It could be a very hot iron. It's not a matter of what is it going to be? Let's figure it out. It's a matter of how am I going to be hurt this time? Because I want to accommodate that pain. If it's something spiky, I want to put a thick glove on. If it's something really hot, I want to put a heat-proof glove on so that when I go touch it, I'm not going to be hurt by it. But it's also experiences like that that makes it really hard for autistic folks to want to leave our house and to deal with unpredictable people, situations, or environments, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be worth it. You know, at its best, we are not completely dysregulated, but at its worst, we have a complete meltdown. Either way, there's always a layer of discomfort, dysregulation, and anxiety around it. It never feels amazing and completely carefree, you know? And so when she's at the door about to have that internalized meltdown, she's realizing, holy crap, do I want to put myself through this hell? I mentally want to because I'm preparing myself for the hell, but then her body is screaming, no, we can't go through it. Okay, so this is the part where she's having her internalized meltdown. For those of you who don't know what that is, I made a video about internalized meltdown a few months ago. What it is what it sounds like. Instead of having an external meltdown, which for autistic folks could look like self-harming behaviors, so you're so overloaded, so overwhelmed, and emotionally dysregulated that you hit a breaking point where you resort to really intense and sometimes even violent body movement to get it out and regulate yourself. It's the same concept of people who do really physically intensive things because that weirdly regulates them and calms them down more than just actually being in a peaceful environment. So for example, people who like getting tattooed because they like the pain, or people who like to do extreme sports. Having an external meltdown and punching yourself, throwing your body against the wall, pinching yourself is just you actually regulating your body by giving that sort of tactile, painful sensation, right? It helps ground you in your body again and move through the intense energies. But if you're a type of person that was shunned and discouraged from externalizing your meltdowns because people would be scared of it or they would think that you're crazy. You basically learn to internalize your meltdowns, which means all of that overwhelm and the need to get it out and you can't control it anymore. You learn to keep it all in despite the need to release it. Think of a grenade, right? It's about to explode. People are going to take it and throw it as far away from themselves as possible. Internalized meltdowners are the types of people who keep the grenade in themselves. And so they are hoping that the grenade would just explode inside themselves and you keep it under wraps. As you can see, that's a very unhealthy thing to do to yourself. It's very harmful. At first, I thought to myself, is this an autistic shutdown? But shutdowns are more so the lack of feeling anything. When she's basically getting into that fetal position and breathing really hard, she's already actively having a meltdown. She's just internalizing all of it, like grabbing all of the things that are trying to escape and pushing it back down. That's very taxing for your body, right? And so after she finishes having that internalized meltdown, she's going to get extremely tired. Her spoons are all gone. She's running on an empty tank. And so that after part is the autistic shutdown that follows the meltdown. Does that make sense? Be easy on your autistic friends or partners who might cancel plans last minute because they just couldn't do it. And it's hard because most people would think that if their friend was constantly flaking or canceling on them or not wanting to go out with them, that we don't like them. But that's not the case. Like a lot of the times we really want to have companions in our life, but it's just so hard when the world around you is so overwhelming and society is so overwhelming and there's no accommodations for you. You want to participate, but the game and the game's rules doesn't include players like you. So it's hard to even participate in playing that game of life. And we're going to see that issue pop up very often in her very few relationships throughout the movie, where the people she does have in her life, which she has very few, oftentimes mistake her and her behaviors for her not caring, when in reality she's just autistic and the way she expresses love is very different. Her behaviors are oftentimes perceived as the lack of love and care when they're just neutral behaviors. They're definitely not indicative of lack of love. She has a lot of love.
Kimi?
I'm here.
Open yesterday's stream on desktop?
So with that being said, this movie was such a delight to watch, and I'm so happy to share it with you guys. There's so many important concepts that I feel like this movie highlights and is so pertinent to deconstruct as autistic folks. I hope it's been as therapeutic for you as it has been for me to see an autistic experience so effectively expressed. Make sure you guys take some time today to drink some water, eat some food, take yourself on a lovely walk. I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.